call this meeting to order and begin with prayer. Almighty God and Lord, you have called us to labor in your vineyard, so grant us now your presence. Enlighten and guide us by your word, that in all matters of deliberation we may always consider the best interests of your church and this congregation. Let your Holy Spirit rule and direct our hearts, that in the spirit of Christian love we may present and discuss matters and be kindly disposed to one another, to the end that all we say and do may please you. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. I'll make the announcement one more time that rules for voting eligibility here are to be 18 years old, to be a member of this congregation, and to have at least once signed the constitution of this congregation, which Barb Nettleton has. So if anyone needs to sign before we get in and vote, well, you can do that right now. In the meantime, I will turn your attention to the back page of your agenda, the standing rules. These are our proposed standing rules for the meeting. They're the same as what we've done for pretty much the past 4 years. I'll quickly run through them. The purpose of these rules is to facilitate orderliness, courtesy, efficiency, and positive conduct. Any motion made from the floor after being seconded will be recorded on paper for the secretary. Before discussion begins, that's just to keep us on track with the motion. Discussion of new business will take place only after a motion has been made. And after 10 minutes of discussion, the question will automatically be called. Voting yes will be a vote to end discussion, and voting no will be a vote to continue discussion. Again, just to keep us on track. We very rarely needed that, but it's a nice thing to have. So I would move that we adopt these standing rules for this meeting. Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor of adopting standing rules? Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Turn your attention to the January 19th minutes, which is the following thing in your packet. Yes, it's been since January 19th that we met in a regular meeting. I'll give you a few moments to review these if you haven't had a chance yet. And then I will entertain a motion for adoption when we're ready. You got to make a motion, Debbie?
I make a motion that we accept the
minute. Have a second? Second here. Any discussion? Questions, clarifications? Okay. All in favor of adoption? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Thank you very much. Moving right along. We will move to the treasurer's report. Before we go there, I'm going to interrupt my own agenda just for a moment. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's here, everyone on the live stream, everyone in this congregation. We were having voters meetings so frequently, and then we just had this year of disconnection. And I know it's been really hard for everyone. And so I know it's a little, I'm out of order on myself right now, but I meant to say it in the beginning, and I just jumped right into the agenda. To Bob and Keith and the old timers who have kept this facility going, to all the volunteers that have made things happen here through many transitions in the past few years, let alone this year. We're all really thankful. So I wanted to say that at the top, and I forgot. So with that, we'll call Kelly up for a treasurer's report.
Good morning. It's so interesting looking at the January meeting notes and thinking, wow, there's been a lot of things that have changed and happened this year. Looking back at that. Anyways, I just want to briefly talk to you about where we are as a congregation through our October financial statements. That is the third, starting at the third page of this packet. So just some quick things to look at. As of October 2020, We are in the black by about $14,000. You can see that like the first top third of the page where year-to-date actuals are. And then you can go through and take some time and look at these. If you have any questions, just email me or call me and ask me questions. I'm happy to answer any of them. If you get to the very last page, you'll see this is kind of our special funds page. Gives you the balances on the special funds. But at the very top of the page, you can see where our general fund checking is. You can see where we were at December 31st of 2019. We were at roughly $108,000. And as of October 31st, we're at nearly $123,000. So you can see our cash on hand has increased, which is a good thing with all this year has brought to us. The other thing I wanted to briefly talk to you about was the budget, kind of starting the budget talk, and Chris is going to kind of walk through more detailed areas of that. But I've never really discussed how the budget kind of comes about. It's kind of a long process. So the first part of the process is just going through and looking at the last couple years, line by line of every single thing that we spend money on, kind of looking at them and seeing if they're non-recurring expenses, if they're expenses that like our mortgage or our electrical that really we have no say in those. And you kind of I start creating this budget worksheet. And then we send those budget worksheets out to all of our ministry leaders, and we ask for their input. What are their plans for the coming year? What do they need money for, and that kind of thing. And then as the council, we all meet, and we go through all of that. And we kind of work through where we think our projected income is going to be coming, what we think we're going to be able to have this coming year. Again, we look at the past few years to see where that's coming from. And then we are setting a budget. Then we're looking at it and making sure that we're going to be, somewhere where we can present to you. Then we call in the ministry leaders and we go over those numbers with them. Now they see what we are saying. This is kind of where we are expecting to be for the year. So that's kind of how the budget starts up, and then we come and present it to you. So just a quick overview of how that process works. It starts usually in early September, so it's a long process. And I thank the council and the ministry leaders because they help tremendously with the whole process. So, all right, anything else?
Are there any questions for Kelly about either this current year or we'll save questions on the 21 stuff to new business, but especially questions about the current year or just other financial type questions?
Barb.
This is appropriate, but how many students are we supporting with the Frank and Lila Smith Education Fund?
Let's see. 5, 6.
Mostly elementary or after secondary?
We had 2 college, and the rest are elementary. So 4, I think that's right. Anyone else? Like I said, don't hesitate to ever call me or email me or anything. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kelly. Next, we have Pastor up for a 2-minute pastor report, I was told. Oh, is it? Okay.
Oh, nice. The 2-minute time restraint was self-imposed so that I'm honest, not Chris imposed. I could go on and on, but I feel like starting with a quote from A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And it goes on about all these things that don't seem to fit together, but in fact have happened. So that's kind of where I find myself right now at St. Paul, and perhaps you do too. But instead of quoting Charles Dickens, I'll quote the scripture. When Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid." And this is something that stuck with me. I won't preach. I promised Chris I wouldn't preach, but here I'm going to give you a little thought. Jesus gives his church an enduring peace so that our hearts are not troubled and that we are not afraid. And this kind of peace is a kind of peace that the world doesn't give. And because the world doesn't give it, the world cannot take it away. So this is the kind of peace which has encouraged us through the best of times and the worst of times. And it's the kind of peace which is getting all of us through these moments too. So I could rattle on about the things that have come and gone in good ways and in challenging ways, but I wanted to take this moment just to encourage you with that our Savior Jesus gives us peace that nobody can take away because he is the one that gives it. And so with that is how I have at least been taking each day after each day, not knowing where I'm going, but knowing the one who's leading me. So I hope that's an encouragement to you all. I have to say that I'm thrilled still to be here, and I appreciate all the comments, too, from folks who have said, we really care for you, and we don't want to see you burn out in your first 6 months here, or whatever it is now, I think 8 or 9 months. But I'm not burning out. I'm busier than ever before, but it's a good kind of busy. It's a positive busy. And I am eagerly awaiting the day when I know a normal St. Paul, and I know you all are eagerly awaiting the day when there is a normal St. Paul again. But until then, and even in spite of it, Jesus gives us his peace. So thanks. I'm encouraged to be watching and seeing a well-oiled machine run, even in the midst of a pandemic. I mean, let's face it. Things are done very well here, and it's a testament to all of you, a testament to the congregation. Certainly its leadership, but its leaders are the congregation too, all of you. Have dedicated yourselves to a church which runs well, but which keeps its mind set on the things of Christ, the peace that he gives being first and foremost. So thanks. I'll end myself there. But I just wanted to encourage you all with what has been encouraging me daily. So thanks.
Thank you, Pastor. We're all very happy that you're here still, too, so. Believe me, we are. Okay, so we move then to new business, unless there were any questions for Pastor. Okay, we'll move to new business. First item up, the approval of the 2021 budget. This is the separate sheet that you have. This budget comes to you moved and seconded from the council. So we move here to discussion, and I want to take just a few minutes and kind of outline a little bit more about what's going on and why we've made some of the decisions we've made, just so you understand, so it doesn't just look like a sheet of numbers and, yeah, sounds good or doesn't sound good. Or let me give you some of the meaning behind the numbers. Always hard to convey before we give the numbers. We had 3 major goals going into the 2021 budget. First, we wanted to balance between 2019 and 2020. 2019, as you saw, it looks like we're going to be massively up in terms of income versus expenses. That's first and foremost due to the fact that our congregation has remained generous in spite of everything going on, or maybe even because of. And secondly, as you would all expect, because expenses are just way down. It's just from early on, I mean, less use of the facility, less ministry expenses, like it really was bare bones there for a while. So those 2 things have produced that I guess, gain, I would say. The council really desires us to be very responsible with that gain. What I mean by that is it would be wrong just to blow it, of course, but it would also be wrong, it would be equally wrong to stockpile it and say we just made money off of the pandemic, right? Like that's for the church a wrong approach too. So it becomes about the wise use of resources, and so that was why we had our first goal. Let's at least balance between the 2 years, if not have excess. Let's not pile it up. And I'll get more to that actually later on. The second thing we needed to do is we needed to provide a budget that gives us maximum flexibility within sort of the amount of trust the council is allowed to have in the congregation, to give us maximum flexibility in an uncertain environment. It is hard to call voters meetings right now. And it could get worse. It hopefully will get better soon. It eventually will get better. But in the meantime, we want to make sure we have the flexibility as we have ongoing transitions in this church to not have to call a voters meeting every time we need to make some little change, right? And then third, and this gets to 1 and 2, to hold on strategic decisions until a wider group than just the council can help to make them. So balancing 1 and 2 are 3. that the council exists, and it's easy to forget this. It's so easy to forget this, especially coming off of a vacancy. We had Pastor Riggs, we were well served by Pastor Riggs, but it was still a vacancy. The council sort of becomes a managerial board. It's not the role of the council in this governance. We really are a policy board. And so making sure that the wider membership gets to participate in strategic planning, in these types of decisions, things like that, even in a pandemic, is very important to us. It's hard to pull off, but it's important to us. So with those three principles in mind, we have our budget. I wanted to clarify some of the salary lines because, as you know, Mike Hush retired in October, and you see a fully funded line there, and as well as a line for family life. And there I know have been some questions as far as what's happening next there. That's one of those strategic decisions, right? That's one of those things the council's not just going to decide. We're going to talk about that. Give me a second on that. I also want you to know, so when Mike announced his retirement to the council and we were working out the details of that retirement, we consulted very closely with the Michigan District, especially with Galen Walther and with Rob Casper. It was customary in this situation, as a gesture of generosity and to prevent a gap in pay as retirement benefits were happening, to keep Mike formally called here longer than October. So some of this budget is Mike in the first quarter. And that was all done in close consultation with the Michigan District according to their guidelines for a worker that had retired after the length of service that Mike had had. And it was a joy to be able to do that for Mike after all he's done here. So that's some of the budget. Not much of it, but some. Another thing is we kept the DCE line fully funded as well as added dollars to the family life wage line. The reason for that is we know that Miriam, and in fact already is taking on more to make up for the loss of a staff member. So that all of that process in terms of figuring out what's next in terms of staffing at St. Paul needs a wider participation than just the council, and that's why we don't have like a one like this is what we're doing right now kind of a thing. But we have arranged the budget in such a way that even if we had Mike still at his existing salary for 12 months plus Miriam taking on additional hours, that's more or less what this represents. So in all likelihood, can't say with any certainty, of course, but in all likelihood, we won't even come up to this number. In other words, it's a little bit overloaded. So we're working through the staffing thing. I want to talk a little bit more about the strategic work that needs to happen. I've mentioned that a couple times now. First of all, we have a facilities planning team that's being run by Bill Zollner. Keith, of course, is involved. Bob is involved. Pretty much everyone who works in the facility has some level of participation. This is really important because oftentimes what happens is a decision will come to the council and say, what do we want to do about this? And so oftentimes, if there's an immediate need or if there's a decent plan that we're going to follow, like, yeah, we sign off on it, we do it. But that's the right now stuff. And at least with COVID and with vacancy and all that, the council has not had bandwidth on its own to deal with future planning for facilities. We all know it's very important. No one is dismissing it. But we need help, and even apart from that, we need additional voices, right? So if you have anything to say about that, anything to think about that, Bill Zollner is your guy. He's working through, it's not too late to participate in that team by any means. And so that's one part of the strategic work that's going to be done. The other part is just some other future planning, things around staffing, things around things like how do we bring new members into this congregation and work them through the process of joining, like all of those things. Stuff that is a little bit more programmatic in nature is a team is currently being formed. That team will, of course, be led by the council and by pastor. This really is programmatic stuff in our governance, really is pastor's domain in terms of the execution. But we're currently working on selecting members and asking people to be a part of that too, and that will be happening like in the next 2 months, basically. Our goal is to have some firm decisions ready to be made by around March or so. So we're picking up also on the work done by 3T, the work done by the call committee. A lot of work was done by these groups to look at our current needs, to look at our current state, to figure out the demographics of this area even. Like there's a huge body of work done in the past 2 years that we can still draw from. Also those spiritual gifts assessments that was done like right before COVID. So we have a lot to draw from in that process. But it's an opportune time, and that's why we've sort of, budget-wise, sort of deferred making big swings in that regard. It's just because we want a wider participation before we start to do that. The final thing I'll say on this is just that this was a really tough budget to make in the sense of the uncertainty, right? Like this is our best guess. As Kelly said, we look at what we think we'll get in receipts, we look at what we think we'll spend on expenses. We will, of course, as a council, we will, of course, abide by this budget. I'm not saying otherwise, but what I mean is just that we may we may need to adjust it down the road. It's hard to say, but we think that this is a good plan to continue to operate this church well into the coming months and the coming year, and I think that is what I have to say to you on this right now. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion. Yeah, Keith.
Is there still a plan on taking money out of the 2% fund?
Oh, yes. Thank you. I meant to mention that, and I just, with everything else, I forgot. Yes. We're drawing down the 2% fund a little bit. Let me explain why. 2% is, what is it at, Kelly, like 24K? The 2% fund, for those of you who don't know, we take 2% of our receipts every year and we put it into this special fund. And the purpose of that special fund is repair and replacement, and especially unexpected repair and replacement, so that we have, a source of cash to draw from for things that come up. Keith, the old timers, everyone has done such a fantastic job in the past few years with the preventative maintenance in this church that we almost never draw on it now. The last time we did was when we did the east doors out there when Pastor Gartner was still here. That was the last time we used that fund. So for that reason, 2% every year, it continues to grow. And we talk about the piles of cash and the barns of cash, right? And at a certain point, you don't want to say, I'm going to let this pile up, and I also have all these other reserves. So the council is going to reintegrate some of those funds into general fund, just because it's getting to be an excessive fund that we're not drawing from. We're still planning on leaving $15,000 in there, and then we also have all the other cash reserves on top of it, of course. Yeah, Keith?
So I do want to express concern about that, because we do have HVAC at $30,000 that's 30 years old. We've got a parking lot that is going to be due for maintenance in the near future. Within a year, we could have an issue there.
Sure.
And then we've got the doors, the roll-up doors. So that's about $20,000 worth of.
Right. So as you know, the council authorized the replacement of the roll-up doors. That's in budget.
Is that?
That's in budget. Yep. Unless the last time we talked, if you wanted to switch to a different project, we were fine with that. But we included that in capital improvements budget.
Okay, so there is a line for capital improvement. Is that?
There is.
Is that a
Kelly's got the full here. What is it in there? While Kelly's pulling that up. To speak to the other concerns that Keith raised, and they're certainly very real concerns that the council's aware of, it's sort of a matter of, is the money here or is the money there? What I mean by that is if you look at the general fund for October 31st, sitting at, $122,000, there's a big bulk of that cash that is essentially not allocated. It's just there in general checking, or we have CDs and stuff too. So there is not, save maybe a complete replacement of the parking lot, save that expense. There's not one facilities expense that has been brought up or tossed around that we couldn't write a check for tomorrow if we wanted to. On top of that, we have a $100,000 line of credit, and our mortgage is almost paid off. So it's, I understand the concern completely, but to say that, and you didn't say this, so I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but to if we look at it like there's $15,000 for unexpected repair and replacement, and that's it, there's no more money, that's not an accurate picture. There's a lot more than that. So we want to categorize funds according to where we think that they're likely to be used. And in the meantime, facilities general could use some help from that 2%. So we're rolling that in now. If the air conditioning breaks in May, we can roll money in May too. It's really about the categorization. It's not about having the funds or not having the funds. We put 17,000 in capital improvements on top of the 15 that will be in 2%. So that's over $30,000 there. Yeah.
So you said that you wanted to draw down on special funds. Isn't that a mandate already that it was voted on and approved that that money is in our budget on special funds to be used towards repair and replace?
Okay. I'm not aware of any restriction on that fund that the council cannot handle. I haven't seen every meeting minute but since the council has existed, the only restriction that I'm aware of on special funds is the restriction on the education fund. I might be wrong.
You don't think that the 2% fund was put in there for facility replacement, not for to be put back into the general fund?
My understanding, and again, this is why we're meeting, right? Like, this is not, we can have this discussion as voters. My understanding is that the council has purview over that fund. That's how, when I was first brought in and when Pastor Gartner was showing me all this, that was what he had shared with us.
I mean, it's, the title of it is repair and replacement.
Right.
Okay, so that had, at some point when that fund was established, somebody had to establish that
Right.
fund with that title.
But so here's what I would ask, and we talked about this when we talked about special funds, I believe in 2019. If we keep funding 2% ad infinitum, and we keep not spending from 2%, we're going to have a big old pile of cash for no reason. So what council is proposing is that 2% money for repair and replacement be funding the capital improvements line, which is repair and replacement. Right? I mean, I guess I'm not seeing why that's an issue. Yeah, Barb.
Why can we not just fund a project from the 2%
Yeah, we could do that.
instead of putting it in a general fund where
Yeah, and what you would see here,
they're not what you
that's fine. I mean, what you would see here, the difference you would see here is you'd see a deficit in the budget. No, that's not even true. No, you're right.
No, that's true.
That's fine. We can do that.
I mean, basically, we did $17,000 for capital improvement, and then the plan is, so if we weren't pulling from the 2%, then our budget would be at a negative 16,000. And so rather than propose a budget of negative 16,000, we said, well, we'll just pull the 17,000 from the 2%, so they kind of make a wash, and you end up with $1,000.
Right. So we could, anyway, I mean, we're getting to the point of actually needing a motion here, by the way, but we would need to defund capital improvements by 17 grand, and then we'd pay that out of 2%. That's what would happen. But I'm not necessarily willing to make that motion.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at this proposed budget, and it has all these different things listed and how much is allocated or proposed for coming year, capital improvement is listed under which one of these categories?
Facilities.
Okay.
But as of my budget, there was nothing for capital improvement.
I don't know about the version you have,
Yeah,
but
it's
the
17,000.
version that we finalized and sent was 17,000.
On page 3 and 4,
No, this is the full, there's a spreadsheet that has each.
We have a copy here if anyone needs to see it.
There's a
but-
whole spreadsheet for facilities, and in there, under capital improvements, is 17,000.
I have a follow-up question.
Yes.
So the 17,000 for capital improvement is part of the requested 78,453? So
Yes. Yes.
so it's not in addition to the 78?
Is not in addition. But we funded 17 in facilities with the understanding, it's specifically in capital improvement line of facilities, with the understanding that we were going to do a transfer of funds from 2% to that line. So this is a really semantical thing, and I understand why it's important. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I just want to keep it clear that this is not a discussion of whether we're funding something or not. This is a discussion of literally where is it drawing from, and does the council have the authority to draw from the 2% to pull it down if it's getting excessive, which I believe we do unless there's a voters vote that I'm not aware of.
So what is the motion that you're expecting us to come?
Right now, what's on the floor is to approve the budget. It would be, what sounds like is being discussed as a possible solution to this is that we would draw down the capital improvement line to 0 and then fund capital improvements in 2021 up to $17,000 from 2%, which is a council decision, honestly, but we can do it here.
I will say one thing about,
Yeah.
you know, this is a bad year. We didn't spend the money because we know the uncertainty. We know we need new air conditioners.
Right,
You know, and that'll come up in our facilities team.
right.
We know we didn't do that this year, but we didn't do it because we weren't operating that full.
Right. It's true. It's true.
So, I mean, it wasn't gonna keep gaining because we do need to replace them.
Yes. Yeah. Keith?
To clarify what I submitted for my budget, I basically submitted operation, and then there was, since we were having that team come together to do the planning portion of it, I did not submit anything for capital improvement, figuring we were gonna have that meeting beforehand, which did not take place. So there was really no capital improvement was submitted to council for that.
Keith, I'm sorry, I don't, and maybe the voters' meeting is honestly not the right format for this discussion, but you sent us a list of capital improvements, and that was how we decided on the roller doors. That was that whole process.
And the roller boards were approved that day when you were in the meeting.
So,
I guess I don't know what, I mean, the only list of capital improvements I submitted was the list of everything that I sent to Bill, which was intended for the meeting, not for,
so this gets to some of what I was saying when we were talking about it earlier, too. The council is not necessarily equipped to do this kind of strategic planning right now, nor is it necessarily the council's role alone to do the strategic planning. We looked at the list that Keith provided to us, to Bill, to whoever, and we looked at the most pressing things, and we funded what we thought was the most pressing thing, which was the roller door, based on your list, with the option that if you, as the facilities chair, wanted to allocate that money differently, as long as you just, ran it by the council first, based on the list of projects you came up with, that would be fine. That's where I believe we left it at our last meeting. Now, if the voters want to make a change to that, because I think we've discussed this thoroughly at this point, then let's hear a motion. Otherwise, I'll hear a motion, or otherwise, I'll be ready to call the question. Yes?
Just for clarity for myself, on the comment that Bob made, was it the desire of the congregation at one time to have allocated funds for facilities repair?
Well,
Know that to be in the board of health and council?
there are those in this room that would know, honestly, would know that better than me. My understanding, and I'll open the floor if Bob or if Chuck want to clarify that, or Barb or anyone else who's been here a little longer than me, is that in our current governance, those specific special fund designations are still at the purview of the council. The council has worked very hard to respect those designations. We're not, for instance, taking 2% and doing something completely unrelated to facilities, or taking Christian education and buying, new computers or whatever that. But ultimately, those special funds are at the purview of the council, with the sole exception of the education fund, which actually has a voters-based restriction on it. That could be incorrect, but without digging through minutes, there's nothing in the policy manuals about that. So I don't know if Bob or if Chuck if there has been a vote saying that this money cannot be touched without voters' approval, I will of course respect that. But I'm not aware of anything.
Well, that was the purpose of restricted funds. And the nice part about the 2% is that it did take council pretty much, not entirely out of it, but it was money that was dedicated that didn't have to come back to council or the general membership for approval. We needed
Sure.
an emergency change to pull it out.
I see. Okay.
The mandate was, yes, we were
Okay.
going to keep 2% out
Yeah.
for emergencies.
Here's what I'm going to propose then. I think based on that, and until, obviously we're not going to be able to sort out all the facts right here in this room together right now. I would be willing to make the friendly amendment to reduce facilities by $17,000 to with the understanding that up to $17,000 of facilities capital improvement expenditures would be funded first through 2%, and then additional expenditures would be funded through non-recurring. I would be willing to accept that change as friendly, out of respect to the history here and whatever else I might honestly not be aware of. We're looking for 1 or 2 council members to give me a thumbs up on that, because I can't do it by myself. Okay, there are 2 others, so that's.
So we're taking the capital improvements line and zeroing it out, is that what you're saying?
Yes, but first, are there any objections to that change from the membership? Yeah.
The question would be is that there will not be any drawing down of that
Right.
amount except for facility.
Correct. So we'll adjust the general and we'll leave it where it is and we'll use it there. That's fine. That's fine. We're getting at the same thing. So yes, Kelly, capital improvements would come down to 0. Facilities would reduce by 17,000, which would be what, 61,453? Which puts us actually significantly on projected surplus. But no, it doesn't, because we'll take out the 17 that offsets it. So no, it keeps us right where we are. I take it back. Keeps us right where we are. Yeah, that's fine. That'll work. Yeah, but semantics can be important. I get it. I do get it.
Yeah, no, the reason is that it takes back that you have to have a special meeting next time.
Sure. Okay. No, it sounds good. That sounds good. I'm on board.
So I understand.
Yes.
So the capital line, improvement line is going to be 0.
Right.
But we're still going to be planning to use the $17,000.
That's right.
But
That- And with the understanding too, and please do not forget this, anyone, with the understanding that we need some strategic help planning the facility management, the facility development over the next few years. That needs to happen. When we have a plan in place, we will be glad to fund it. But what is happening right now is just the one-off stuff, and it's while it's been this facility is clearly beautifully maintained. It's not enough, right? We need a roadmap for the council to thumbs up and say, yes, we'll fund that, or to bring to you and say, yes, we're going to fund that. What do you think? So that's what needs to happen next there. That's really important that happens. Yes, Scott?
Just so my clarity is for the council, so when we move forward on this, and to what Bob's comment was, just for clarity, Bob, so you're saying that with the 2%, we have to have a special meeting in order to spend the money out of the 2%? No. That's what I'm confused on. That's where, if we're putting the money back in, and is it at the council's preview to spend that money without a
It
special
would
meeting?
still be, the way I see it is the council would still have to approve the expenditure, but it does not include membership, because it's been pre-approved, you know, that this money is gonna go in to be responsible for, things that could happen quickly.
Okay.
Otherwise, if we change it, you know, 10%, that costs, a 10% change in the budget costs for a whole new budget.
That's right. I think that what I will make as a to-do for myself is just let's memorialize some of this discussion around special funds at the January meeting, just so whatever's in the past, we don't necessarily have to reference that far. We can get something more recent and get it all, so everyone's on the same page and no one is surprised or blindsided or uncertain, like I feel a little right now. But yeah, we'll do that. Okay, so any other discussion on budget questions? Yeah, Jack.
Just one question, changing subject and then.
Sure.
Subject, but category. Right at the beginning, you talked about Mike and the transition.
Yes.
The transition plan and how that affects the budget. Does the budget also reflect your council's thinking about what's gonna happen with that position going forward in 2021, not just the transition from Mike?
To a degree. So we believe that we would be able to fund the equivalent staff hours of what we had before under this budget. So there may be a certain circumstance that would require adjustment, but we think especially because a decision won't be made, January 1st. So with a couple months in, it is unlikely that we would bring anyone on board here that would exceed what is budgeted for wages. So there might be at the summer's meeting a matter of just moving some lines around, you know what I mean? But we feel like is a fairly realistic picture of the high end of what might happen next year in terms of staffing. So does that answer your question? Okay. Okay. Yeah, we won't overrun this. I mean, it would be, I can't imagine what we would do that would overrun it. So yeah, Keith.
You've talked about the staffing, we talked about facilities and everything else, and I know we have a surplus this year going into next year, plus we're expecting a little bit increase. What other programs are we funding that, I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of, what is this going into, the extra funding?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it cuts to the heart of really everything that we've worked on in the past few years and everything that I feel very strongly about in this church personally and as a council president. That when the membership gives money, gives of their income to this place, that this church has a very important responsibility to use it to build the kingdom of God. And this is the very thing we're asking for help with in terms of these strategic teams that are going to be formed and some of the discussions that will be had very soon here. I can tell you that I know, Pastor, I'm going to put you on the spot. You're holding your child, but is it okay? Can I ask you, and if no, then I'll answer for you, but just some of the most immediate programs that are high priority for you and Miriam right now? Is that okay? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Because I feel like Pastor will answer this question better than I would. It's really more his area than mine. Yeah, you can use that one.
So yeah, some of the areas of ministry that we're for sure focusing on that we don't want to see fall to the wayside or to suffer are places especially of youth ministry, particularly because right now we have a program in place which feeds and nourishes spiritually the kids who are especially in confirmation and younger. The place where we don't see much that we're seeking to build up, especially in this new year, are the places for post-confirmation youth. So certainly youth is a place that we want to see thrive, post-confirmation as well. So all the more reason to keep our nose to the grindstone there now and to build upon the early thoughts of building up high school youth group, involving post-confirmation youth the way that they want to be involved, I believe, but have no clear opportunity currently. These are places where we'd like to see become stronger in the programming. Places also of new member reaching out into our community, certainly in the outreach piece, but also in new member sort of acclimation, I guess you would call it, but bringing new folks into the congregation. And there have been even a small handful during pandemic who have come into our congregation, which is quite something to try and do case by case. We certainly are just a number of people in this congregation slightly too large to handle everything case by case. So we want to have a plan. We want to have a systems approach to take care of people and bring them in. And not only bring them in for a time and say, hey, look at us, and then we don't know what to do with you in the long run, but keep people here and keep them engaged. So those two areas of new member assimilation, you might call it, that always sounds very sort of cold and austere to me, but bringing newer folks in, whether by transfer or if they've just stumbled upon us here, not only downloading into their brains the things which we hold near and dear as far as doctrine, but also bringing them into our way of life at St. Paul, the things we do, the community, connecting people with groups within the congregation which already exist, perhaps may grow. So the new member bit, the outreach, and the youth ministry aspects of what's going on here at St. Paul are places we'd like to bolster and to build up. I don't know if that answers quite the question, but...
Those are, I know in the conversations that Council and Pastor and Miriam have had, those have been the most frequent topics of discussion. In the meantime, we know there are a lot more opportunities. We had big discussions about outreach prior to Pastor coming, and of course there have been a million wrenches thrown in that wheel, but we're not giving up on that either. That's something that should be worked through, and again, worked through by a group wider than the council, and as well as, we're trying to avoid that word assimilation, but just all of that whole process by which people get acquainted with St. Paul. It's not merely a question of membership. We think often of membership, and that's maybe the primary thing to think of, but many people become loosely affiliated with many organizations, and those loose affiliations can be the bridges to bring them into membership. So even just the interactions we have with people in the community that may first make them aware of us, second, make them interested in being involved with us, and then lead to membership, baptism, discipleship, all of those things, right? So that's a mega conversation that needs to happen here that, frankly, the council has not had the bandwidth for. And we know that. It's just, I mean, you've seen the world right now. So we need your help. We need your help with that stuff, and that's why we're going to be asking for that help. Yeah, thanks. Not to mention, too, just all the possibility of online ministry, given that all of us churches were suddenly thrust into that this year. And started out of a sense of emergency, but could be grown into something really special. So all of that and a million more things probably, but okay. What other questions? Okay, so this budget as amended is moved and seconded from the council. Ready for a vote? All in favor of adoption? Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. As Kelly said, that constitutes an enormous amount of work for a lot of people, and lots of discussions and debates and making cases, and I'm so thankful for this congregation that even in spite of our differences sometimes, that we're able to conduct things in a civil and orderly way. So thank you for that. Next, we have council nominations committee. We have an election process here that involves announcing candidates for church council in December and then having the vote in January. So this is not a vote, but I'll call Bob up as a member of the council nominations committee.
The nominating committee would like to present to the voters assembly 3 candidates for church council: Chris Mowers, Stan Buckruck, and Chuck Simpson. Each member has consented to this nomination.
Would you want to share too who is on the committee? Just so everyone knows.
Yes, Scott, Bill Zollner, Rob, and myself.
Okay, so no action required on that at this time. We will have elections in January, and we'll work that process then. Is there other new business to be presented by the voters? Yes, Barb.
I think this has already been approved by the congregation, but in case not, I have a motion that
Sure.
I'd like to present.
Please. Do you want the mic?
I got it loud.
I know you do.
To have agenda and minutes to previous meetings made available in printed form at least 1 week in advance of meeting dates.
Okay. Is there a second? Okay. Let's talk about this. Chair Lamore?
It's difficult for me to come to a meeting and there's one more item on this agenda, the 2% local missions designation.
It's an announcement. That's not a agenda. Yeah.
Right, but, and not know that in advance, so I prefer having something that I can read, whether
Sure.
it's posted online, whether it's put on our website, to look at the minutes and approve them without having chance to question anything in advance. I prefer to have that, and I believe we have made this motion before, maybe I'm wrong.
No.
Because I cannot get to the minutes. We did. I can, and not.
No, that's not true.
Yeah, yes. It's not possible right now for a member of the congregation to be able to look at archived minutes. They're no longer stored in any paper form in the office, and I believe the secretaries have not got access to them as of 2 or 3, well, over the summer I requested minutes.
The voters' meeting minutes?
Voters' meeting minutes was not able to
The
get them.
secretaries don't have it?
And council, I think we've also asked for in the past at meetings, this is not part of my motion today, but that we would have a synopsis or at least some awareness of what the council is discussing at their minutes also. So the minimum I would like is to be able to get my hands on an agenda and the previous minutes from the previous meeting a week ahead of time.
Sure. I'll open more discussion. But, I mean, it's not an unreasonable request. I get it. But I want to speak to, we've already made this motion, because believe me, you have not. The motion you made last December was for budget specifically. And we wrote it down, and we were very careful to fulfill that request of the voters. So the agenda, the stock agenda, is in the Constitution. I can publish it. I mean, you're really saddling the next president with this because I'm termed out. But council, are we willing to just accept this? Is that we don't need to vote on this, right? We can just accept this as, yeah, that's fine. It's a fine request.
No, it's a motion, You gotta vote, though, it's on the motion.
I think we can accept it as friendly, but
What we did last year, when it was posed about the budget, was it was 2 weeks.
it was 2 weeks, yeah.
The budget's been posted out on the bulletin board for almost 3 weeks now.
On the bulletin.
Yeah, so.
And hard copy, they have hard copies.
And had hard copies as well, and we can do that, I would guess, with
Right.
the minutes for the previous, when I put out the budget, I could put out the, when I put
Yeah.
out the, whatever. I'm assuming you want the financials, I mean, if we're having a meeting, basically we're asking for is the things that you need to look at during the meeting to have 2 weeks in advance.
I said 1 week, but do we need to amend it to make it 2 weeks? Or do I just withdraw?
You can amend it. You can amend it, and then Debbie has to second it. You want to amend it to 2 weeks? Good with that? Okay, 2 weeks. Yeah, we can vote if there's no other discussion. This is fine. Like, I have no objection to this. I just want to be clear about what has happened. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay, yeah, that's no big deal. Thanks, bud. Okay. To speak briefly, well, let's deal with that in announcements. Okay, are there new business? Okay. Jumping to announcements. So the announcement of the 2% local missions designation, again, bringing this up because I wanted you to have time with it. The very reason why I was doing that. This congregation has a pattern of giving 2% of its receipts every year to local missions. This is something that can be done throughout the year, but is frequently not exercised until the end of the year. So we will have some sum of money based on whatever our receipts are. Our receipts are probably to the tune of $6,000 or so to give to local missions. That number will be determined after the 31st of December. But what I always ask in December is to think of if there are local missions that you're involved with that could use those funds to make recommendations. And you don't, in fact, please don't wait till January, because oftentimes if we get recommendations in advance as a council, the council will actually come with, here's what has been given to us, and here's what we'd like to present for adoption or amendment or whatever. But yeah, so if we know a lot of you are involved in things, and we know a lot of organizations really could use funds right now, and so think about that. Email me, email the church office. Teresa.
Question about that. So
Yep.
I see on in the October 20 budget that Here We Stand was budgeted as under local missions, under the 2%.
Yes.
Is that standard, or are you looking for someone to recommend to do that again next year, or is that something that we just do?
So Here We Stand was something the congregation signed on to a couple of years ago in terms of it was for the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. But Here We Stand is actually done now after this year. So yeah, exactly. And it was for church worker scholarships and things like that we were funding. But it's done now. So, yep. Keith?
Definition of local.
So I think in-state is pretty much the way we've abided by that. I mean, maybe Toledo would be okay. But yeah. Not a national program, not an international program, but something, I don't think we have a mileage radius defined, honestly, but that's something we could work out together as voters too if there's a proposal. Okay, good on that. Any questions on that? Okay. The other announcement I want to make, just in regard to council minutes, which Barb did not make a motion on but mentioned, again, I think this is fine, and we were, for a long time there, frequently sending synopsis. I'm not going to make excuses to you. I'm not. I promise. But I want you to just to think about it from the other side, too. That when we're continually putting information out and requesting feedback and just getting nothing, we're going to cut that thing and do something else. Like, it's just, it gets to be, when you have finite time, I understand the responsibility. I will not shirk from that responsibility. We will do that. But please, my ask of you is to be engaged with that material and talk to us about it. and to not just take it for granted until, there's some reason to go look. Because this council has put in a tremendous amount of work in the past 3 years. Very challenging, self-sacrificing work. And I'm not saying that up here in front of you all to get some parade or whatever, but I just want you to know that this has been really challenging. And especially bringing things to us outside of voters' meetings might be nice. But anyway, don't want to end it on that note. Jeez. You all are great, though, seriously. I'm so thankful for this church home. Yes, Dan?
I think, I'm speaking from the heart, and I think by the Spirit. I am so proud to have worked with this guy as our president, and to watch him sacrifice here so many times in so many ways, taking us through the whole virtual worshiping, leading the council, coming up with good ideas, playing the organ. Chris has done so much. He deserves your appreciation, and let me say.
Thanks. I promise I was not fishing for that. But I appreciate it nevertheless. And I understand, too. I mean, I understand that sometimes we come together to disagree, and that's okay. That's the thing that needs to happen. So I appreciate each and every one of you. I do. I really do. It's an amazing place we have here, and that we've been able to call such a wonderful pastor and continue to function when so many churches are just struggling and seemingly on their last breath. So very thankful. One more little downer announcement in case you're curious. So I know Pastor announced in worship this morning that my dad was awaiting a COVID test. He has COVID, so just, if you want to pray, that would be nice. He's doing okay. I talked to him. He's not feeling good, obviously, but he's not hospitalized or anything like that. So it's looking okay. He is a very good doctor. Was also a pretty good Latin percussionist. It's kind of cool. But anyway, I'd appreciate prayers. Any other announcements for the group? Oh, sorry, Keith, yeah.
Would it make sense just for somebody to walk through the plans for Christmas?
That would be a great idea. Yeah. Are you ready? Can I just hand you the mic in place? Is that fine? Or do you? Okay. That would be, because it's changed a couple times. I'm not sure if I'm actually up on the most current plan. So.
Yep. Okay, that's a good question. There are some slides that are circulating on the website and on the announcements, but real quickly for the rest of Advent, we've got our midweek services on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. That's already on top of the normal worship schedule, which normal worship schedule has been, of course, the 2 services on Sunday plus the 4:30 on Monday. Then for Christmas itself, Christmas Eve, we'll have 3 services, 4 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 10 o'clock. Those 3 are the normal times, right, that we do worship on Christmas Eve. After the 7 o'clock on Christmas Eve worship, at 8:15, that's giving an hour for worship and then 15 minutes to readjust, we're going to be offering the drive-up communion for the 7 o'clock service only on Christmas Eve. Then on Christmas Day, 10 a.m., I know that's a slightly different time, right, than we're used to gathering on a Sunday, but 10 o'clock a.m. on Christmas Day, divine service. So communion offered at all 3 services on Christmas Eve, plus drive-up communion. The same is true of Christmas Day. Also, communion will be served. Does that answer the question that you guys have? Yeah, Keith? Seating, we're spreading out. That's the best we can do with what we know. This room, the fellowship hall, the basement also if we need, in that multi-purpose room, we will be able to spread out. It's super hard, right? We don't know what we don't know. To accommodate an unknown number of people in a strange time when people may be dying to come to church, or they may say, to heck with it all and we're going to stay home. I don't know, right? None of us know. So right now we're going to set up the most that we can in the spaces we have available, which I know it's kind of funny from my perspective. People talk about St. Paul being a small church. We're a cute small church. We're not a small church, I'll tell you that much. We've got lots of space, and we may not think so from our own perspective, but for a lot of other churches, we have immense space to set up for. So all that is to say, we'll set up the worship like we have been with distancing, with the masks and the whole 9 yards. We'll also be adding into the factor the basement multi-purpose room in case we need that as an overflow. Short of that, I suppose they could stand in the parking lot and watch it on their phones, but we don't really want that either. Yes, we'll be live streaming them. The 7 o'clock. Yep, 7 o'clock. Bailey. Good question. Will there be drive-up communion on Christmas Day? I believe that's in the announcement. Yeah, okay, thanks. Miriam is giving me a big head shake. I am waiting for the day when my brain returns to me on all cylinders, but right now we're a bit slow and a bit on borrowed time for sleeping. But yes, there will be drive-up communion. Thank you for confirming the announcement that I made that I forgot. Yes. Great, thanks everybody.
Any other announcements? Okay, let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.